I woke up to the sound of heavy breathing next to my bed, but when I turned on the light, no one was there, and the bedroom door was still locked. It started with a voice outside my window, whispering my name. I was the only one awake that night. Christmas Eve was supposed to be magical, but something about the way that voice called me felt wrong. It was almost midnight, and everyone else in the house was asleep. My parents were upstairs. My little brother was in his room. Then I heard it again, low and raspy, dragging out my name as if the person outside knew me. I froze on the couch, staring at the window. Across the room, the curtains were closed, but I could see the faint outline of someone standing there. I wanted to scream for my dad, but my voice felt stuck in my throat. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I could hear the crunch of snow beneath slow, deliberate footsteps. Whoever it was, they were circling the house now. I grabbed my phone and tried to call my dad, but there was no signal. The Wi-Fi was out too. The fire in the fireplace dimmed suddenly. The temperature in the room dropped like a stone. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. I whipped around, but there was no one there, just the flickering shadows cast by the dying fire. My heart was racing, and I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe the stress of the holidays was getting to me. Then I heard the front door creak open. I bolted upright and stared at the hallway leading to the door. The lock was broken, swinging loosely on the wood, even though I was sure I had locked it earlier. The door wasn't fully open, just enough to let in the freezing wind. I slowly approached, my hands trembling. As I reached out to close it, I saw them, footprints in the snow leading away from the house. But they weren't normal footprints. They were too big with strange claw-like impressions at the toes. I slammed the door shut and locked it again. My dad always kept a baseball bat by the stairs, so I grabbed it, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I went to wake my parents, but as I climbed the stairs, I noticed something that stopped me cold. There was a wet trail leading from the front door, up the stairs, and into my parents' room. I couldn't breathe. My knees felt like they would give out, but I forced myself to move. The door to their bedroom was open, just a crack. I pushed it slowly, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would burst. The room was dark, but I could see my parents lying in bed. At first I thought they were sleeping, but then I noticed the sheets. They were soaked in something dark. Blood. I backed away, biting my lip to keep from screaming. That's when I heard my brother crying. His room was at the end of the hall. I ran toward it, gripping the bat tighter. The door was wide open, and he was sitting on his bed, tears streaming down his face. He looked at me and whispered, "It's in the closet." I froze again, staring at the closet door. It was slightly ajar, and I could see nothing but darkness inside. I whispered back to him, "Stay here," but he shook his head violently. Before I could say anything else, the closet door swung open. The thing that stepped out was unlike anything I had ever seen. Its body was tall and thin, almost skeletal, with skin so pale it seemed to glow in the dark. Its eyes were black, still cruelifree and purple, extending its deadly eschel eyes. It had a grin stretched unnaturally wide, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. It didn't move toward me. It just stood there, staring at me, as if daring me to do something. My brother screamed, and the thing turned its head to look at him. That broke me out of my paralysis. I swung the bat as hard as I could, but it passed right through the thing, as if it wasn't even there. It let out a laugh, a low, guttural sound that made my stomach turn. Then it lunged at my brother. I don't remember much after that. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, I was outside in the snow. My brother was gone. The house was gone. It was just me standing in the middle of the street, staring at an empty lot where my home used to be. The police found me a few hours later, wandering barefoot in the snow. They said there was no record of my house ever existing, no evidence of my family. I tried to tell them what happened, but they didn't believe me. They said I must have had a mental breakdown. Every Christmas Eve I hear the voice again, whispering my name. I woke up to the sound of scratching. It was faint at first, like something clawing softly against wood. I thought it was a dream. The clock on my nightstand read 12:03 a.m. I rubbed my eyes and sat up in bed, listening. The house was quiet, but the sound was still there. It was coming from the living room. At first, I thought it might be the cat, but then I remembered. We didn't have a cat. I slid out of bed and crept down the hallway. The Christmas tree lights were still on, casting soft colors across the walls. The fire in the fireplace had gone out, leaving only cold ashes. That was when I saw it. The stockings hanging from the mantel were swaying, not a little. They were moving like something had brushed against them. My heart started racing as I stared at the fireplace. The scratching sound was louder now. It was coming from inside the chimney. I wanted to run back to my room, but something kept me rooted in place. My parents were asleep upstairs, and my little sister was in her room. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just the wind. Then I heard it, a deep, rasping breath echoing from the darkness of the chimney. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the fireplace. I wanted to scream, but I was too scared. The scratching turned to thumping, like something heavy was trying to climb down. The smell hit me next. It was awful, like rotting meat and burnt hair. I covered my nose and gagged. That was when I saw the first hand. It was pale and bony, with long, sharp fingers that looked more like claws, like he might have been papered with knives on it. A head followed next. I will never forget that face. Its skin was stretched tight over its skull, with hollow black eyes that seemed to look right through me. Its mouth was full of jagged teeth, and its breath came out in long, visible puffs in the cold air. It crawled out of the fireplace slowly, its body twisted and unnatural, like it didn't know how to move properly. I stumbled back and tripped over the coffee table, making a loud noise. It began to crawl, legged. The cold bubble floated in. The thing snapped its head toward me and smiled. It was a smile that made my blood run cold. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the stairs. I shouted for my parents, but I knew they wouldn't hear me in time. Behind me, I heard the thing moving. Its claws clicked against the floor as it followed. I made it to the top of the stairs and ran into my parents' room. I shook my dad awake, screaming that there was something in the house. He groggily sat up and told me I must have been dreaming. That was when we heard it, the heavy breathing. My mom sat up now too. My dad got out of bed and told us to stay there. He opened the door slowly. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. As soon as the door opened, the thing lunged at him. It knocked him to the ground with an unnatural strength. My mom screamed as it tore into him. I grabbed her arm and pulled her toward my sister's room. I locked the door and I pushed the dresser in front of it. My sister was crying. asking what was happening. I couldn't answer her. I was too scared. The sound of my dad's screams stopped, and everything went quiet. Then came the knocking. It was soft at first, gentle taps against the door. Then it grew louder, harder. The door shook under the force of it. My mom held my sister close, whispering that it would be okay. I didn't believe her. The knocking stopped, and for a moment, I thought it was gone. Then the dresser started to move. You iggered. The knock creaked alone. I heard the knock again, and the door creaked open slowly, revealing the thing standing there. Blood dripped from its mouth, and its black eyes locked onto me. It stepped into the room, dragging its claws across the wall. I grabbed a lamp and threw it at the thing. It shattered against its head, but it didn't even flinch. It lunged at me and I screamed. That was when the lights came on. I was sitting on the living room floor in front of the Christmas tree. The fire in the fireplace was roaring again, and the smell was gone. My parents and sister were there too, sitting on the couch, staring at me. They asked me what I was doing. They said I had been screaming and thrashing around like I was having a nightmare. I tried to tell them about the thing in the chimney, but they didn't believe me. They told me it was just a bad dream. But I know it wasn't. I stared at the fireplace. There was something on the floor in front of it. It was Christmas Eve, and the snow fell silently outside, blanketing the world in a deceptive calm. My family was gathered around the fireplace, exchanging small gifts before the big celebration the next morning. We were happy, warm, and safe, or so I thought. That night, something came to our house, and I swear to you, it was not human. It started with a knocking. It wasn't loud or aggressive, just as soft. It was nearly midnight. He frowned, clearly puzzled. Who would be out in this weather? He muttered, before getting up to answer it. My mom called after him, telling him to be careful. We all assumed it was a neighbor in need, maybe someone stranded. But when he opened the door, there was no one there. The snow on our porch was untouched, no footprints, nothing but an eerie stillness outside. My dad shut the door and locked it, dismissing the whole thing as kids playing pranks. But then, the knocking started again, louder this time. And it wasn't just the front door. It was coming from the back door, too. A chill ran down my spine as my mom grabbed my younger sister and held her close. My dad checked the back door, but again, no one was there. No footprints, no signs of anyone. Just snow falling heavier now, almost suffocating in its silence. I remember the moment when the power went out. The entire house plunged into darkness, leaving only the faint glow of the fireplace. My dad grabbed a flashlight and told us all to stay together. He said he was going to check the breaker box in the basement. I didn't want him to go. Minutes passed, then what felt like hours. He didn't come back. My mom started to panic. She told me to stay with my sister as she went to find him. I wanted to stop her, but I was frozen with fear. The knocking started again, this time louder, almost angry. It wasn't coming from the doors anymore. It was coming from the windows. I kept telling her it was going to be okay. The windows rattled like something or someone was trying to get in. I couldn't bring myself to look. Finally, my mom screamed. It came from the basement. My heart dropped. My sister started crying, and I told her to stay where she was. I didn't want to leave her, but I couldn't sit there and do nothing. I grabbed the flashlight my dad left behind and made my way to the basement door. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended. The basement was pitch black. The air was freezing, colder than it should have been. I called out for my mom and dad, but there was no answer. Only silence. Then I heard breathing. It wasn't mine. It was heavy and labored, like something trying to stay quiet, but failing. The flashlight beam flickered, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing in the corner of the basement. It was tall, too tall to be human, with limbs that seemed to stretch unnaturally long. Its face, or what should have been its face, was hidden beneath a red hood, and in its hand it held something shiny, a knife. I stumbled back, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The thing stepped closer, its movements slow and deliberate, as if savoring my fear. I screamed and ran back up the stairs. I grabbed my sister and told her we had to leave. We ran to the front door, but it wouldn't budge. The locks wouldn't turn, the windows wouldn't break. It was like the house itself was keeping us trapped. The knocking returned, this time deafening, coming from every wall, every door, every window. My sister was hysterical, and I could barely think straight. And then, everything stopped. The knocking, the rattling, the breathing, the fireplace. The fire had spread, consuming the room in flames faster than I thought possible. I grabbed my sister and ran to the kitchen, the only place not yet engulfed. We crouched under the table, coughing, crying, praying. The last thing I remember before blacking out was the sound of heavy footsteps on the floor above us, moving toward the kitchen. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. My sister was alive, but barely. My parents were gone. The house was gone. The fire department said it was an electrical fire caused by the storm, but I know that's not true. They never found my dad's body, and my mom, her body was found in the basement, but the official report said it didn't match the fire. They said it looked like something had torn her apart. Every Christmas Eve since then, I hear knocking. It doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter if I'm alone. At midnight, it starts, and I know one day it will find me.